ladies, let's start with discussion, and you are also invited to ask questions in the application, so don't forget it. So I will start with you, Kamila. So could you take us back to the beginnings of your entrepreneurial journey and share what inspired you to start your own business?
Yeah, so it was actually disappointment. So when I was still doing my bachelor's, I already started consulting for some of the big companies like Nestle or Ogilvy. And I was really disappointed with the fact that people only make assumptions about what their customers want. And I imagined that companies with large budgets also have large budgets for market research, but it was not the case necessarily. So this is where I vented then my frustration with the system of like, okay, there are millions at stake when we are developing a new product or a new service, and the amount of checks in place of asking real people is just like not really matching the effort or the risk. And so this was originally what inspired me to find a way that would be affordable, just to make market research affordable for companies to test all the ideas, not only the most impactful ideas or only ideas in certain stages. And this is then when I partnered up with my co-founders, and we took a technological approach to all of this.
Okay, and how actually did your academic background influence your business experience? Because you are saying out loud that you are also a researcher, that you would love to become a researcher. You published scientific papers and etc. But still, you also want to be an entrepreneur. So how do you combine these roles?
Yeah, well, originally I wanted to be a researcher, so I wanted to stay in academia. And then I realized that most of the endeavors were stopping at publishing a paper without really finding a practical application for it. And for a brief time, I tried to bridge the gap of research and business. And this is what we are also building on at Lakmoos, because I don't think we could have ever built anything that we have built without this mindset of a scientist. We took a very methodological and structured approach to all the things that we develop, and at the core, we connect behavioral science with AI. Both of the fields are research heavy. The validation is probably the most exciting part for us these days, and just trying to navigate in the landscape how to make sure that methodologically this all works and reflects the real world. Although it is all data models, it is the most fascinating thing that stems directly from what academia is interested in. And we borrow a lot of strategies how to approach these very complex problems from academia, but the challenge is that we need to do this on a 10% budget and also 10 times faster. So this is where the academia also meets the startup pace.
Could you also maybe share with us how big Lakmoos right now is? How big is it a team? How many founders you have? And in which life stage are you now in the company?
Yeah, so we are just before raising our seed round. We have the first tens of pilots with large companies in banking, automotive, telco, and energy. We are just starting to explore retail. And during summer, it was like a team of 30-ish people, also including interns. Right now, I think we are around like 25 people probably, and we are running with 2 co-founders at this point.
Great. So you seem to be a rocket startup in such a short time, such a big team, and it wouldn't be possible without investment. So Jana, you were one of the first investors, maybe the first one. That's true, you seem.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so what persuaded you to invest in such a young team from academic background? You know, aren't those red flags for investors?
Kamila, definitely. We met during COVID, and back then she didn't have a startup, and I just reached out on LinkedIn that it's very lonely without people everywhere. And we had a very short chat about her life in Holland. And then a few years later, 2 years later, maybe she reached out that she has a startup and she would like to talk about it. And the way she was able to make me fall in love with her idea, with the way she thought about it. That was the first step. So for me, investment is always about trusting the person behind the business idea that he or she will make it happen. Because it all comes down to the founders. Even a wonderful idea can be killed by a team that isn't able to pull it off. Regardless of how perfect your idea is, if you cannot sell it, if you cannot get it out in the world, and if you cannot overcome difficulties that every startup faces, if you just like give up, doesn't work, so we don't have enough clients, the pilots take forever. For example, Lakmoos is in a business, they're doing business with large corporations. The sales cycle there, it's nerve-wracking. Playing poker is a joke compared to that. So you always do that first, and then it was looking at the market cap, if there is one, looking at the economics, at the innovation potential, and how big is a barrier for anyone else to try to do the same thing Lakmoos does. Because of a lot of ideas are perfect and no one is doing them yet, but if a larger company comes and invests enough money, they can replicate a lot of startup ideas faster with a much more skilled team. So that kind of brings down the competition. And what we found in Lakmoos, or what I saw in Lakmoos, was that the barrier for anyone to do the same thing would take long enough that Lakmoos can make it in the meanwhile and get a market share large enough that the others that come later will have a difficult position.
Okay. You already mentioned some key factors investors are looking for when investing in startups, but what's unique in university startups? What would attract you to those specific startups and spin-offs?
Startups at universities, and especially when they are in a field where they need some additional resources, some additional brain work, they have a wonderful access to people that are skilled, to professors, to PhD fellows, to a vast knowledge base. So basically, for example, behavioral sciences and the thing Lakmoos does, I would never be able to pull it off. So this is something that, given the field that this startup is working in, it's invaluable. Then there are startups that don't need this so much, but in some fields this is wonderful. And it always helps, because what Kamila told me and what we have looked at was they had a lab at university that helped them. The methodology could be checked by professors. Even as investors, we would never be able to double check the methodology behind a startup like this. So it also helps for the investors that their idea is proven and approved by people that are smarter than us.
Great. It seems like anyone should invest in university startups.
There are downsides, but yes, this one was one of the most positive ones, that someone validated this and said, yes, this makes sense. And this makes sense on such a level that we will promote it, help them, provide them with support.
Okay. Kamila, you combine PhD studies with running a startup. So what unique challenges, like a young founder with two roles, do you face? And what's your cookbook, maybe, to say how to manage it all?
Yeah, I don't think I could do both things if they didn't overlap. But they do, which is amazing, because my research ties directly to what we are doing at Lakmoos. So it gives me more time to go in depth, because for me, most of my agenda in Lakmoos is just like putting out fires. So I'm doing professional firefighting most of the day, which is quite stressful. And then I can dive deeper into my research, which is a totally different set of activities that I do. And it's kind of soothing. So for me, it's kind of therapy also, because no one can sue me if I, write a wrong sentence in academia, so that is nice. I mean, it's usually the case. So that's quite nice. On the other hand, it often feels like I do not belong anywhere, because for startup world, academia is quite slow and too rigorous and not really worth the amount of effort. And for business, for academia, the business people are sellouts, so that makes it quite complicated. And I really need to make sure that I work with the right kind of people who kind of understand both of the sides and can see the value that is being created by the synergy. I hate the word synergy, sorry, but like with the composition of these like unique skill sets and also environments that I can access quite easily.
I love the word synergy, by the way.
Okay.
Okay.
And different people, different tastes. It's fine.
Anyway, you started the business when you studied in Rotterdam at university.
That's correct.
So you got some support from university, and maybe could you compare your experience from Czech universities, and maybe to say some inspiration for Czech educational system?
Yeah. I do not think I could start Lakmoos when I would be still studying at a Czech university for two reasons. The first one is that my university, at least in Rotterdam, is very business oriented. Although I studied very much like a scientist field, not a business field, they still were systematically used to people doing something extra, running a business next to their studies, or doing like student competition. So there I was not really an exception, but the system was ready for it. So suddenly it was no problem if I needed to go to a conference, or I would not be, or if I would be absent from a seminar or something, like no one would even raise an eyebrow. And from what I heard in the Czech Republic, this is not really possible. This is not really happening. So there it's much easier to comply with the system that already favors the exceptions and is kind of like set out for that. The second part is that in Rotterdam, and I attribute this to them having a business school or like a business faculty there that is quite advanced. They have a large network that kind of sticks together. So they were also helping to connect me to different players in the ecosystem, to share knowledge with me. And they also had like this hub for student startups, meaning that I could also get my office and kind of like some of the environment that would be favorable for the position of actually starting a startup while in university. So for example, we could use some of the venues that they had for our conferences, like mini conferences, but it was still a nice gesture from them. That was just like one of the examples that they were really trying to help their students, so that it's not only about exams and sitting at lectures, but it was also about encouraging them and creating a system when it's kind of easy to start a company or a project or a competition or do something beyond what is required. And this is something that I think in Czechia we should really work on, because this is not something that I have observed here.
Great. Maybe Anna would like to follow up from your investor's perspective. What are you missing when young entrepreneurs are approaching you as entrepreneurs? So what are you missing as an investor?
We are definitely missing Czech universities and Czech schools supporting students in business. Unless it's, and I don't even think the business faculties actually encourage their students that much to go and pursue a career during studying. The universities don't usually tolerate absence from school. The amount of effort you have to put in to get a degree here is high, and I absolutely understand why, but you don't get cut any slack. So that would definitely be wonderful. And if they would provide and connect universities with business more, because a lot of the fields could benefit from businesses actually coming to university and saying, okay, it's really nice what you think about theory and how this works, but this is what the real world is like. This is what we need. This is what we would like your students to actually know when they come out. And I understand it's a rigorous system. It's very difficult. I've been talking to different universities about how this could be changed, and I always get a lot of isn't possible answers. It would be much nicer to say, okay, maybe not like this, but if this is what you want, these are the ways how we could get there. So I miss more of a yes approach to business needs when we come to universities asking for interns, asking for students, asking for universities helping us talent source, for example. It's very difficult to talent source at universities without the university's consent. So it's a process.
Okay. Before asking more questions, I would like to encourage also you in the audience to ask questions via Event application. And let's continue with the discussion. You are a female founder, female investor, and we don't see many women in those roles in the room at tech conferences. So how does it feel for you, actually, to be female founder? You have two male co-founders, so What's your experience? Just fun.
Just one. I don't know, it's normal for me. And I think I'm lucky enough to be living in an era when it's okay to just walk away from a conversation that doesn't seem appropriate, or when I hear, something that it would not be comfortable always. And there are plenty of people for whom it is normal that women are in leading positions. And I think, at least like from what I heard from other stories, it was probably not happening a couple of years ago. But for me personally, I always have an option to seek out those people and those conversations that do not take women as, women like too stereotypically, let's say, and there is always the option. So for me, I can kind of like filter out the influences that I wouldn't want in my life.
And then about what do you recommend as a female investor, how to encourage other female to actually enter the investment area, the field?
I have been talking about, we've just discussed it before the panel, I've been talking about how to encourage females in a lot of things because we still tend to underestimate ourselves. There are a lot of, for example, sites about female investing, and females don't invest in general. It's not just the VC world, it's just the startup world. We don't even do real estate investing. We don't do stock investing. So any kind of investing. And I really feel that as society, and it goes back to families, not companies, not schools, it goes back to families. We should empower girls to feel that they can. And when I come to the VC world, it's fresh for me. I've been a lawyer for the past 8 years, and this year only I have announced that I'm actually coming and being full-time a GP in a VC fund. And I said that one of my missions is to find strong female founders. The startup doesn't have to have only females, but I encountered really, really wonderful startups that have a diverse team, a mixed team, which is always the best. We're not looking for girls only. It's not a girl power thing, but it is let's look for a mixed team, because like in Lakmoos, the dynamic you see at the board meetings, the dynamic you see in the team is different. So that is something. But I did get a lot of hate for that as well, because that is the purpose of investing should be to find the best value for investors, to return as much money as possible. And for some reason, when you say you're looking for female founders, that means you're not looking for return on investment. You're basically looking for, send me a photo, don't even send me a pitch deck, send me a photo and here's 100,000 euros. So for some reason, I got a lot of hate on my LinkedIn, and this is one of the things that have been said. Why are you looking for female founders? Why are you not looking for a return on investment? And just the thing that there's an equation, female-founded startup means less return on investment, is the reason why I actually think we should look for female founders.
Great, thank you for saying this out loud. I see some questions in the application. The most rated one goes to Kamila. How does the business stand out in the sea of AI products? So tell us about your AI product. I love this one.
Yeah. The fun part is that there is no one AI, so there are different applications of AI. There are also like different tools and systems and algorithms, although neither of the word is really accurate, but like there is a sea of opportunities, and on the other hand, you have a sea of possible methods and approaches within the world of AI. But what definitely influences our position on the market, let's say, is that today, when you say AI, you think of ChatGPT or any other large language model, which is not what we are doing. So in that paradigm, or in like that thinking, we basically have two options. We either can say, yes, this is AI, but it is not a ChatGPT wrapper. Or we need to say, okay, yeah, ChatGPT could maybe also imitate what we do. But then again, we make it better, and this is like the reason, but we need to explain a lot. In a world where AI wasn't such a huge buzzword, I don't think we would have an easier job. It would just be different because we kind of probably would be advertising still data models, because this is what all of AI basically is. But right now we needed to catch up with the time, and we kind of need to wrap our technology in a buzzword that is new, that is not a large language model, but it's neuro-symbolic AI, which frankly is still a lot of maths and a lot of probability, which we absolutely adore. But it's not, you know, it's just maths in a cool jacket, and the cool jacket is AI.
Okay, and Jana, the question for you, should the approach to get more business practice into Czech universities be driven by universities themselves or companies?
I don't think the universities have any motivation to drive this, or I haven't been able to figure out one. So I think it should be driven by the students. It should be driven by the students because companies have very little influence over what universities do other than provide sponsorship or funding to universities companies prefer. So I think it should be driven by students, and they should know what to ask the university, what are the possibilities. They should be shown what is actually happening on the west of our borders. And there is also one more question that I think I can fit into this one, and what needs to change for universities to bring more spin-offs. I don't think Lakmoos is a spin-off in the true sense of the word. When you are a spin-off, it means that you actually do have university participating in the idea as such. And that is a very difficult thing to actually take university spin-off and make it happen. It's a lot of politics. It's a lot of politics, it's a lot of money involved, it's a lot of who's going to get what, and we're cutting a pie that is non-existent at that point usually. So to actually have more spin-offs happen, it would be wonderful. There are wonderful ideas stuck at universities that cannot be monetized, that cannot be brought to the market. Health tech, medical things, very interesting and helpful things. But the the laws would have to change, and the mindset of the universities would have to change.
Definitely university startups needn't to be necessarily spin-offs. That's important to point out. Last question, because we have last 2 minutes left. So what advice would you give to students or academics who have a promising idea in their head and just are unsure about pursuing it as a business?
Just start. You don't need to start with an investment. You do not need to start with the first big client. You do not really need to start with a team. Just try to find the first prototype that is within your scope, also financial, but also time-wise, and just try to bet on this first small thing, and then just see where it goes. You do not really need much to start with. We actually started half a year maybe before we got our first investment, so that we do not come to investors empty-handed. We already had at least something to show for us, and I think this was also then what made our lives easier, because suddenly we had something specific that we can start conversations about. So just start.
Great, thank you. And Jana, from your side.
I would also add, don't be afraid to ask for help. The world is full of people that are actually willing to help, and no one has made it on their own. Even people that are saying, I'm a self-made man or a self-made woman, I did all this on my own. They didn't. We all had help at some point. Someone who trusted us, someone who believed us, someone who gave us a wonderful piece of advice like Kamila. So don't be afraid to reach out. There are so many people in business who are willing to mentor, to give time for free, to actually validate your ideas or help you push it further with contacts, network, or anything. So start and ask for help.
Actually, someone says that investment, it's like a marriage. And I can see beautiful energy, mom, for you too. So good luck.
Thank you.
With your startup and investment. That was Kamila Zahradníčková, Jana Sedláková. Thank you, ladies, for sharing your story of Lakmoos AI and its investment.